The silence inside the vast marble halls of the Kingston estate was broken by the smallest, yet most powerful sound anyone could have imagined. A child's voice, soft, fragile, but carrying the weight of years of hope and waiting. The billionaire's son, little Adrian Kingston, spoke his very first word. For a family that had lived in grandeur, surrounded by gold chandeliers and endless luxuries, this moment felt like a gift far greater than wealth. The boy had been quiet for so long, a mystery wrapped in innocence, and doctors had warned that he might never speak at all. But that day, he looked up at his father with shining eyes and whispered a single word that made everyone in the room freeze. "Papa." The billionaire, Charles Kingston, a man known for his iron heart in business and ruthless decisions, felt his chest tighten with emotions he couldn't contain. He had conquered global markets, silenced competitors, and built empires, yet nothing had ever broken through his cold armor like this tiny word. His wife, Eleanor, covered her mouth with trembling hands, tears pooling in her eyes as joy overflowed into sobs. Servants in the room clapped softly, some crying themselves, touched by a miracle that money could never buy. But as the family embraced this miracle, a shadow moved quietly in the corner. The maid, Maria, a young woman who had served the Kingston family faithfully for years, stepped closer. Her eyes were wide, not with joy but with something unspoken, fear or perhaps guilt. When the others calmed down, she leaned down beside the boy, her voice trembling as she whispered words no one expected to hear. What she said turned the room into a storm. Adrian didn't learn that word from his father. The room fell silent again, but this time the silence was cold. Charles stared at Maria, confusion sharpening into suspicion. Eleanor's heart dropped, a chill running through her veins. The boy sat smiling, unaware of the earthquake his maid's whisper had caused. Maria swallowed hard, realizing her truth was about to change everything. The story of Adrian's silence had been a wound for years. Specialists had flown in from every corner of the world, all declaring he might never speak. Eleanor had prayed through sleepless nights. Charles had distracted himself with work, and the entire household carried the weight of despair. But Maria, who spent the most time with the boy, had quietly taken it upon herself to try. When doctors gave up, she sang softly, told him stories, and repeated words with love and patience. She never sought credit. She only wanted to see the boy shine. But the word Adrian spoke, Papa, had not been taught by Charles. Maria confessed that she had been the one teaching him, but not in the way everyone expected. She revealed something deeper. Adrian had heard her tell stories of her own father, a man who had died too young, leaving her to work as a maid to support her family. In those stories the word Papa had been repeated again and again, filled with longing and pain. Adrian had absorbed it, not from the man in front of him, but from the ache in Maria's heart. Eleanor broke down completely. For years she had longed to hear her son acknowledge his father. Now that it had finally happened, she learned that it wasn't the bond of father and son that had inspired the word, but the sorrow of a maid's loss. Charles's pride cracked into anger. To him, it felt as if his son's first word had been stolen, tainted by someone else's story. He accused Maria of overstepping, of filling his son's mind with things that didn't belong to him. His booming voice echoed through the hall, demanding she leave the estate immediately. Maria stood her ground, though her knees trembled. She admitted she had whispered the word into Adrian's heart, but she asked Charles a piercing question. What good is being a father if you've never truly been present for your child? The words landed like knives. The billionaire who had conquered the world stood powerless before the truth. He had been absent, too busy, too unreachable for his own son. Maria's words cut him not because they were disrespectful, but because they were true. Eleanor tried to intervene, begging Charles to understand. She reminded him that love wasn't just about titles or wealth, but about presence and care. Adrian had learned the word not because Maria had stolen it, but because she had filled the silence he left behind. For the first time in his life, Charles felt, what it was like to be powerless. He looked at his son, smiling innocently, and realized he had missed years that no amount of money could buy back. The family stood at a crossroads. Charles's pride urged him to cast Maria out, erase the shame, and protect his image as a father. But his heart, newly awakened by the sound of his son's voice, told him to face the truth. After hours of silence and storm, Charles called Maria back. He admitted his mistakes, though the words came heavy and slow. He asked her not to leave, not because she was a maid, but because she had been more of a parent than he had dared to be. Maria wept quietly, nodding. She wasn't looking for glory. She only wanted the boy to have a chance at happiness. From that day forward, Charles began to change. He spent less time in boardrooms and more time on the floor with blocks and picture books. Eleanor found her heart softening as she watched her husband discover the joys of fatherhood he had long ignored. Adrian, once silent, now grew curious and talkative, repeating words with excitement. And though the first word had not come from his father, the ones that followed did, because now Charles was present to teach them. As months passed, the bond between father and son deepened. Charles learned that love wasn't about grand gestures, but about small, consistent moments. He read bedtime stories, took Adrian on walks, and listened when his little boy spoke of dreams only a child could imagine. Maria remained part of their lives, not just as a maid, but as someone they respected and cared for. She had given them not only a word, but a truth that changed everything. The story of Adrian's first word became more than just a family memory. It became a reminder that love cannot be bought, commanded, or faked. It must be given freely with patience and care. For Charles, the moment that once felt like a wound turned into the start of redemption. For Eleanor, it was proof that miracles come in unexpected ways. And for Maria, it was a quiet triumph, knowing that her pain had been transformed into a gift for a child who needed it. Adrian grew, surrounded by love that was finally real. His laughter filled the mansion halls, replacing the echoes of loneliness. And though his first word had shocked everyone, it was the words that followed, the ones he learned from a father who had finally opened his heart, that defined the rest of his story. Sometimes the first word is not the most important one. Sometimes it's the words that come after, born from love, forgiveness, and the courage to change, that shape a family forever.